While cities prepare for another year-end celebration, while streets fill with colorful lights and homes receive festive decorations, there is a silent portion of the population that observes all this with a feeling very different from what is expected. It is not joy, it is not anticipation, it is not that collective effervescence that seems to take hold of everyone around. It is exhaustion. A deep, visceral exhaustion that cannot be resolved with a good night's sleep or a few days of rest. It is the exhaustion of those who have already gone through many cycles, of those who have already seen many promises of new beginnings dissolve into thin air, of those who have learned firsthand that calendars change, but life continues to be exactly what it has always been, a daily confrontation with our own existence. If you have ever felt displaced amid collective euphoria, if you have ever questioned why everyone seems so excited about a date that, deep down, is just another day, this video is for you. We will explore this feeling together through the eyes of Albert Camus, the philosopher who understood like few others the complexity of living authentically in a world that insists on offering us illusions of meaning. Prepare yourself for a journey of self-knowledge that can completely transform your relationship with social expectations and with your own human nature. The exhaustion that some people feel during year-end festivities is not simple physical or mental fatigue. It is something much deeper and existential, something that Albert Camus would immediately identify as a symptom of what he called consciousness of the absurd. When we look at the crowds celebrating, at families gathering with forced smiles, at fireworks exploding in the sky as if they were capable of illuminating something more than momentary darkness, we realize that there is a desperate attempt to create meaning where perhaps it simply does not exist. People cling to year-end rituals as if they were capable of magically erasing all the problems that accompanied them during the previous months, as if the simple change of a number on the calendar could fundamentally transform their lives. But for those who have already experienced the awakening of consciousness, for those who have already understood that reality does not change by decree or collective desire, all this movement can seem not only useless, but profoundly exhausting. Camus taught us that the absurd arises precisely from the confrontation between our human need to find meaning and significance in life and the apparent indifference of the universe to this search. When we observe year-end festivities with this perspective, we begin to perceive how they function as a mechanism of collective escape from this absurd reality. People become involved in a kind of social theater, where everyone temporarily agrees to believe that those celebrations really matter, that those moments of artificial joy can somehow alter the natural course of things. But those who have already developed a sharper consciousness of the human condition, those who have already faced head-on the essentially meaningless nature of existence, can no longer participate in this performance with the same innocence. Hence arises the exhaustion, not only from having to pretend enthusiasm they do not feel, but from constantly witnessing this collective flight from reality. The Algerian philosopher showed us that there is a fundamental difference between living in illusion and living with consciousness. Most people during festivities temporarily choose illusion. They allow themselves to believe that fireworks carry real promises, that year-end embraces can heal deep wounds, that New Year's resolutions have the magical power to transform personalities and circumstances. This choice is not necessarily wrong or condemnable, but it is a choice that those who have already awakened to consciousness of the absurd can no longer make with sincerity. It is like trying to believe in Santa Claus again after discovering that it was parents who put presents under the tree. Knowledge, once acquired, cannot simply be forgotten or ignored. And this knowledge, in the case of Camus' philosophy, is the understanding that we live in a universe fundamentally indifferent to our needs for meaning and purpose. But here we reach a crucial point that is often misunderstood. The exhaustion we feel in the face of festivities does not need to transform into cynicism or bitterness. Camus was not a pessimist in the traditional sense of the word. He did not preach despair or giving up on life. On the contrary, his philosophy offers us a way of living that is simultaneously more honest and, paradoxically, richer and more meaningful than life based on illusions. When we stop expecting external celebrations to bring us happiness or meaning, when we stop depositing our hopes in collective rituals that can no longer genuinely touch us, we open space for a more authentic form of existing. Exhaustion, in this context, can be seen as a sign that we are ready for something different, for a more mature and realistic approach to life. The question is not whether we should or should not participate in festivities, but how to participate authentically, without betraying our deeper understanding of reality. Camus suggested that we can embrace life in all its complexity and contradiction, including moments of collective celebration, as long as we do so with full consciousness of what we are doing and why. We can choose to be present at family gatherings. We can appreciate the beauty of fireworks. We can even toast the passing of the year. But we do this not because we believe these actions will fundamentally change our existence, but because we consciously choose to participate in the human experience in all its richness and ambiguity. The difference lies in the motivation and consciousness we bring to these experiences. The exhaustion we feel can be, therefore, an invitation to a different kind of celebration. Instead of forcing ourselves to feel a joy that is not genuine, instead of pretending enthusiasm for traditions that have lost their meaning for us, we can create our own rites of passage, our own ways of marking time and honoring our personal journey. This might mean spending the turn of the year alone in silent contemplation. It might mean gathering only with people with whom we have authentic and deep connections. It might mean creating completely new traditions that better reflect our current understanding of life. The important thing is that they are conscious choices made from our own inner necessity and not from social pressure or unreflective habit. Camus frequently spoke about the importance of revolt, but not in the traditional political or social sense. He referred to an existential revolt, a refusal to passively accept conventions and expectations imposed on us without questioning. The exhaustion we feel in the face of standardized festivities can be the beginning of this revolt. It is our psyche telling us that the time has come to assume greater responsibility over our own experiences, to stop waiting for others or external circumstances to provide us with satisfaction and meaning. It is an invitation to become the authors of our own existence, to create our own values and our own rituals of celebrating life. And here we arrive at a fundamental aspect of Camusian philosophy, the idea that once we accept the absurd nature of existence, we are also free to create our own meanings. We no longer need to conform to the prefabricated meanings that society offers us. We no longer need to pretend that collective celebrations touch us deeply if that is not true for us. We can invent our own ways of honoring the passage of time, of expressing gratitude for the experience of being alive, of connecting with other people in more authentic and meaningful ways. This freedom can be frightening at first, because it places us in the position of total responsibility for our choices, but it is also incredibly liberating. Exhaustion, seen from this perspective, is no longer a burden or a problem to be solved. It is a sign of existential maturity, an indication that we are ready to live more consciously and authentically. It is our soul telling us that the time has come to stop trying to fit our unique and individual experience into the standardized molds that society offers us. It is an invitation to explore more personal and meaningful ways of celebrating life, of marking the passage of time, of connecting with our own humanity and with the humanity of others. When we begin to see exhaustion this way, it transforms from a burden into a guide, from a problem into an opportunity for growth and self-discovery. But it is also important to recognize that this journey of consciousness can be solitary. When we step out of conventional celebration patterns, when we stop automatically participating in collective rituals, we may feel even more isolated and displaced. Camus deeply understood this solitude. He knew that consciousness of the absurd can be a heavy burden to carry, especially when we feel surrounded by people who still live comfortably within the illusions we have abandoned. But he also showed us that this solitude does not need to be despairing. It can be instead a form of deeper and more authentic solidarity with all other human beings who also face, consciously or not, the same absurd condition of existence. When we recognize that all of us are fundamentally alone before the mystery of existence, when we understand that all of us struggle to find meaning and purpose in a universe that seems indifferent to our needs, we develop a form of compassion that transcends superficial differences between people. The exhaustion we feel during festivities can connect us more deeply with all those who also feel displaced, all those who also question social conventions, all those who also seek more authentic ways of living. This connection may not be obvious or explicit, but it exists, and recognizing it can transform our sense of isolation into a more subtle but more genuine form of belonging. Perhaps you recognize yourself in this description. Perhaps you too have already felt this peculiar exhaustion in the face of festivities, this sensation of participating in a theater in which you can no longer be a convincing actor. If this resonates with you, leave a comment sharing your experience. Simply write, "I feel this too." Your response will not only validate your own feelings, but will also create connection with other people who go through the same experience. Because as Camus taught us, recognizing our shared condition is the first step to building more authentic solidarity. You are not alone in this, and your honesty might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. Camus' philosophy also offers us a unique perspective on what it means to live fully. He did not defend a life of denial or isolation, but rather a life of conscious engagement with reality. This means we can choose to participate in year-end festivities, not because we are obligated by social conventions or because we naively believe they will transform our lives, but because we consciously decide to experience all aspects of the human condition. We can drink champagne knowing it is just champagne. We can embrace our family members knowing that embraces do not heal all wounds. We can watch fireworks knowing they are just colored lights in the sky. But we do this with full presence, with total consciousness of what we are doing and why. This approach completely transforms our relationship with celebrations. Instead of seeking in them salvation or magical transformation, we can appreciate them for what they really are. Moments of shared human experience, opportunities for connection, expressions of our collective need to mark time and create rituals that help us process the complexity of existence. When we stop demanding that festivities be more than they can be, when we stop depositing unrealistic expectations in them, we can finally relax and appreciate them more genuinely. The exhaustion we felt can give way to a more mature form of participation, a form that honors both our need for authenticity and our need for connection with other human beings. Camus also warned us against the danger of becoming bitter or cynical in our consciousness of the absurd. It is easy to transform understanding of the illusory nature of many social conventions into an attitude of superiority or contempt for others. But this is not the lesson we should extract from his philosophy. True wisdom lies in maintaining both consciousness and compassion, both lucidity and the capacity to be surprised and moved by human experience. We can recognize that year-end festivities do not have the magical power that many people attribute to them, and at the same time be genuinely moved by a sincere smile from a child, by a moment of real connection between people, by the simple beauty of a tradition that, even being artificial, expresses something true about our human need to create meaning and beauty in our lives. The challenge lies in finding this delicate balance between consciousness and participation, between lucidity and emotional openness. Camus lived this balance throughout his life, maintaining himself simultaneously as a critical observer of society and as someone deeply engaged with the issues and sufferings of his time. He did not isolate himself from the world for having understood its absurd nature. On the contrary, he dove even deeper into human experience, seeking ways of living that were simultaneously honest and passionate. It is this conscious passion that he invites us to cultivate, this capacity to embrace life in all its contradiction and complexity without losing either lucidity or the capacity to be genuinely moved. When we apply this perspective to year-end festivities, we begin to see possibilities that did not exist for us before. We can create our own rituals of reflection on the year that passed, our own moments of gratitude for the experience of being alive, our own ways of connecting with people who really matter to us. We can consciously choose which traditions make sense for us and which we can leave aside without guilt or resentment. We can honor our need for authenticity without becoming inflexible or intolerant with those who make different choices from ours. And perhaps in the process, we discover that the exhaustion we felt was just the first stage of a broader awakening. Perhaps it was our internal navigation system telling us it was time to find more authentic ways of celebrating life, ways that were more aligned with our current understanding of who we are and what we really value. Exhaustion in this sense can be seen as a sign of growth, an indicator that we are ready to assume greater responsibility over our own experience, to become more conscious and intentional in our choices about how to live. If you have reached this point in this reflection, if these words have found echo in your own experience, consider subscribing to the channel. Not because you need more content to consume, but because perhaps it is important to have a space where questions like these can be explored with honesty and depth, a place where your unique experience and your journey of self-knowledge are valued and understood. Here there is no pressure to feel what you do not feel, nor judgment for questioning what everyone else seems to accept without questioning. It is just a gentle invitation to be part of a community of people who also seek to live more consciously and authentically. The beauty of Camus's philosophy lies in its capacity to transform our relationship with suffering and with the most difficult aspects of human existence. He showed us that recognition of life's absurdity does not need to lead us to despair, but can, instead, free us for a more genuine and passionate way of living. The exhaustion we feel during festivities, seen from this perspective, is not a sign that something is wrong with us, but a sign that we are awakening to a more mature consciousness of reality. It is an invitation to let go of unrealistic expectations and social obligations that no longer make sense for us, to embrace our own uniqueness and create more personal and meaningful ways of celebrating the extraordinary experience of being alive. There is nothing wrong with feeling exhaustion when everyone around seems to be celebrating. There is nothing pathological about questioning traditions that have lost their meaning for you. There is nothing antisocial about seeking more authentic ways of relating to the world and to people. On the contrary, these can be signs that you are growing, that you are developing a more honest relationship with yourself and with reality. And this honesty, although it may be solitary at times, is also the foundation for more genuine connections and for a life richer in personal meaning. The path may be different from the one most people choose, but that does not make it less valid or less important. In fact, it may make it even more precious because it is truly yours. So, in this approaching year-end, allow yourself to feel what you really feel without guilt or shame. If it is exhaustion, honor this exhaustion as a sign of your own authenticity. If it is melancholy, recognize that melancholy can be a profound form of wisdom. If it is solitude, understand that conscious solitude can be richer and more meaningful than superficial company. And if amid all this you discover moments of genuine joy, of real connection, of true gratitude, celebrate these moments with the intensity they deserve, knowing they are precious exactly because they are authentic. Camus' absurd life is not a life empty of emotion or meaning, but a life where each emotion and each meaning are consciously chosen, created by ourselves, lived with total presence and responsibility. And perhaps in the end, this is the most beautiful and courageous way of celebrating not only the passage of a year, but the extraordinary and inexplicable miracle of simply existing.